we don't talk about that anymore. Physical evidence, we don't talk about that anymore. No. We talk in terms of, we talk in terms of pathological, forensic, and analytical science.
Don't worry about that. Forensic and analytical science service.
Right.
Okay.
How are we going for volume? Can everyone hear?
I can
Is
speak
this supposed to
quite
work?
loudly.
And it shoots on.
No.
I'll press the button.
No.
Hang on, I've got an expert microphone operator.
All
About
right.
to take the stage.
Then I cannot move.
Oh, well.
Oh, you move around, don't worry about that. We won't hold you to it.
As long as you're in camera range, I don't mind.
So everyone that comes in late from now, we can stare at them with that look of shame. We got to give them time. That's what we did. Oh, not you, sorry. You wanted to go. Sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great,
Oh,
how's
yes.
that?
Yes.
You can hear me.
All right. If it's too loud, let me know. I will back or whatever. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. I hope I will not bore you. And the introduction has been done, so I would just say my own introduction. You are very privileged today because in this room you have got 4 arsonists, the 4 ones who are doing and analyzing arson cases for the whole New South Wales. The name of my first name, Susanna, sits in that white top there. Next to her, Margaret, and next to her in the green top, a very new member of our Ignitables team, Fiona. Now, we have been, 3 of us, in this business for many years, starting with me, 19 years, 15 years Susanna, and 6 years Margaret. So I guess I can call us quite experienced. And I prepared, this is a new presentation. I've done several presentations about Ignitables, but I don't like repeating myself. So this is a brand new presentation, and I based it on what was going on in the laboratory for the past, let's say, 7 years, and we all contributed to. Error. Now, I'll be talking not very much about science, just briefly skipping through examination procedures and technique use. Then I'll talk about our experiences, laboratory versus doc. I'll be talking about field test kits for collection of ignitable liquid residues, which were developed in our laboratory. And after a couple of interesting, unusual and recent cases. If I'm too fast, slow me down, please. So for examination technique, you probably are not the ones who are receiving the reports from us, but whoever receives the report, this examination technique appear on the bottom of the report. The first 2 lines, that's a must. That's done for every single exhibit, which and then we sometimes use extra additional tests if necessary, which can include solvent extraction, visual examination, or infrared spectroscopy to identify the particular materials we recover from the fire debris. So basically the procedure for examination of ignitable liquids is a 2-stage process. The first part of it, it's called absorption. What we'll do, you can recognize the tins, which are very common for fire investigations, filled with debris sample. So we simply insert a special tube, stainless steel tube, filled with a special solvent called 10X. We close the lid, and after that we heat the samples in the oven. In this case, example is 60 degrees overnight. When the heating cycle is finished, we simply take the tubes out, place them in a special rack, and then they are analyzed on automatic instrumentation. The first part on the left side, it's called automatic thermal desorber, which is called ATD. What is happening in this machine? The cubes that actually absorb any volatiles released from the sample matrix of the sample are heated at a high temperature. All the volatiles are released from the tube, and then they are concentrated in one part of the instrument, automatically injected onto gas chromatogram mass spectrometer, which I will refer to as GCMS. What is happening in GCMS? There is an analytical column through which the volatiles are traveling, and then they are separated based on their volatility or boiling point. The higher the boiling point and the less volatile constituent, the longer they stay in the column. The software attached to this instrumentation gives us reports in the form of graph, and each graph contains numerous number of peaks. Each peak represents an individual compound as they are separated within the column. Because we analyze ignitable liquids, like all of the ignitable liquids, they are not single compound. They are very complex mixture of hundreds of constituents, and some of them are present in a higher or some in lower concentrations. But all these constituents create a pattern which is characteristic for each accelerant. In this picture, there are 5 basic accelerants or ignitable liquids, starting from petrol, mineral turpentine, kerosene, heating oil, and distillate. And as you can see, without knowing what is the compound, you can see that there is a beautiful pattern which can be easily recognized from a long distance without knowing what each individual peak is, if something like this is compared with the standard. So the principle of examination for ignitable liquid residues is pattern recognition. And that has been, it's not a new technique, it's not new invention. The ignitable liquid has been recognized by pattern recognition for hundreds of years. So these are neat liquids. But since we analyze 5-degree samples, not necessary we would get in the sample this type of ignitable liquid. During the fire, if the ignitable liquid is exposed to heat, evaporation occurs. So what is happening? The most volatile constituents disappear, and then we finish up with the residue containing high boiling point constituents. And that changes the pattern. In this slide, I try to demonstrate the changes of pattern of petrol. Most of the other examples during this presentation will be related to petrol. The reason for that is petrol is the most common accelerant present in 5-degree samples, and also it's relatively a very, very volatile ignitable liquid. So all the precautions need to be taken mainly for petrol. So in the first chromatogram, that's 100% liquid petrol, and then as it goes down, its evaporation occurs down to 5% residue. From the first to the third, we can still see some peak for toluene, which is the principal constituent of petrol, but gradually, the later eluting compounds are becoming stronger and stronger till we finish up with the residue where there is no toluene visible. So whoever is interpreting the results has got to keep this in mind, that from 5-degree sample cannot get fresh petrol. Now, there is another problem when it comes to examination of 5-degree samples. As the materials burn, they produce a normal number of thermal degradation products we call pyrolysis products. And again, just example of 2 burned carbon samples in comparison with petrol. The red circle represents toluene, and toluene is present almost in every burn sample. The next blue circle represents C2 alkyl benzenes or xylenes. And again, they are commonly present in fire debris samples. Yet, they are the main constituents of petrol. And then we move to C3 alkyl benzene, which are with the black circle. In some fire debris, we might get those as well. And these three groups of compounds, not only in fire debris samples, but they are common constituents, for example, shoes. Shoes are very commonly submitted for examination to find ignitable liquid residues. So those are very common to be found in shoes. So we need to be very careful what we report, how we do it. We need to strictly follow our criteria. So we are not reporting false positive results. Very common question we are asked is, what is your detection limit? I always say our detection limit is dangerously low. And what I mean by that is we need to be very careful that no contamination occurs in the laboratory, either from liquids or standards we use or cross-contamination between the samples, because the slightest vapor and we can detect it. So when we treat, of course we have got several instruments, and each instrument provides sort of different sensitivity or different chromatogram when it comes to, if you compare this one with the previous one, it looks slightly different, but it's just a different instrument and different printer. So our detection limit we claim is 0.1 microliters. 1 microliter is 1,000th of milliliter. And we put this amount in 1 liter metal can, and that's what we analyze with the samples, and we call it detection limit. When we do that, that's what we get for petrol. And then of course we might use more concentrated samples, as next line is 0.5 microliters. Just for demonstration, 0.5 microliters can be said it's a normal size drop divided by 50. So it's still very, very small amount, or we go to 1 microliter. So you can see that the first red line, which is detection limit, in comparison with the strong sample on the bottom, that it still follows the same pattern. As I was talking before about pyrolysis products, toluene and xylenes present in the samples, for petrol, we look like at the full chromatogram, but the most important part of this chromatogram is the region which is underlined with the blue arrow, which we call petrol fingerprint region. The same concentrations, just different part of the chromatogram, going from 1 microliter down to 0.1, and you can see how the pattern is followed in each line. And this is what we consider petrol fingerprint. This is what we need to see, we need to get from the machine if we are going to report petrol was detected. It's very specific pattern. No other ignitable liquid has got this pattern, so we can be very, very positive what we are reporting. In addition, we are looking, within this pattern, we are looking for particular compounds, the presence of which we need to confirm. So it's not just that, okay, we have got the pattern, but we need to confirm that that double P is actually compound 4 and compound 5. We selected this and we call them petrol target compounds. So it's very hard if we follow our criteria to report false positive sample. Because if any of this is missing, if the pattern is not there, or we cannot confirm the compounds, simply we cannot report petrol. Another example of fire debris sample. And this is, I would call action debris, generally material burned beyond recognition. And very commonly we get these samples marked as collected from the seat of fire. Well, it's a pure charcoal, and this is a typical chromatogram for these types of samples. I never ever had action debris producing any particular patterns or any particular chromatograms. So it's almost a straight line, a couple of lumps, and normally we would report this sample as was examined for the presence of ignitable liquid residues and none were found. Now, if this result goes to the DPP or the investigators, there is a question, what does it mean? And we need to answer these questions sometimes over the phone, or sometimes we need to write a statement for the court. So the reason for that is, no ignitable liquid was used to start the fire. Ignitable liquid was used, but was completely consumed by the fire. No ignitable liquid was present in the sample we analyzed. It means that, okay, it wasn't present in the sample from here, it might have been present in the sample from there. We don't know, because our results refer only to the sample we analyze. And a very lucky last one is, yes, there could have been ignitable liquid residue in the sample, but we could not identify it due to two basic factors. Either the concentration was so low that it was beyond our detection limit, or there were so many interferences we could not identify what we recovered. I'll explain that later. Now, this is another example of pyrolysis products. It's a different sample matrix. Those two first ones were carpets. This is a lino material. And you can see it's a beautiful pattern. There are like nice peaks following on each other. So it really looks interesting. Of course, we would compare this with all the standards, but there is no ignitable liquid pattern in that chromatogram. So what we normally would do, we would identify the main constituents of this mixture. We would check if they correspond to what is the sample matrix, because there are many information about what to expect from lino, carpet, timber, or this. And then we would report it as, again, was examined for the presence of ignitable liquid residues, none were found, and we would put a comment, volatile substances that can occur as thermal degradation products in 5-degree samples were detected. So we cannot say any more. Just to demonstrate how, not dangerous, but how pyrolysis products can cause problems. This list, they are the top 10 compounds commonly detected in burned carpets or generally household products. The ones marked in red, they are actually petrol constituents. So the top 10, out of top 10, 7 actually normally are visible or present in petrol. So we really need to be very careful when we interpret the results not to sort of slip and report false positive. Sometimes we don't detect anything, and we used to put this in our reports if we could prove that there was a delay in sample collection or the samples were improperly packaged. But this sentence doesn't appear anymore in our reports because the exhibits are coming to the lab properly packaged with very few exceptions. And when it comes to timeliness, that is really applicable only for, let's say, clothing items of suspects. And well, if they are not known, then there has got to be delay. So generally, when it comes to fire scene examination and collecting exhibits from the fire scene, this is not applicable. Now then we ask you, who are going to the fire scenes, and then we want to produce good results, bring the crime scene to the lab in the form of sufficient and properly packaged exhibits. And then we see what we can do for you. Now, the second part I would like to touch is about our cooperation with the K9 team. Phil, Joe, yeah, all of them. We had a very close cooperation, relationship, and we do have still today, with the K9 trainers. And that started sometimes in 2009, maybe earlier. But definitely it continued quite extensively in 2010. And we were trying to find the reasons why the doc and the lab do not agree based on real cases, not artificial samples, not spiked samples, real cases as we received them in the laboratory, and then we did additional testings and we're trying to find out what is wrong. And these results were presented by Susanna in 2010 at the 20th ANZSS conference. Now, so we started with Ellie and Phil. I can't remember when.
2007.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I really cannot remember. And then we continued with Sheba, and then with Rina and Joel. And as I said, the most intensive, it was around 2010, but it's going on till today. We have been very, very helpful to each other. We learned a lot from the guys. I guess the guys learned a lot from us. And what I can say that in 2009, the hit or the confirmation for the positive alert of the dogs was under 50%. When we started to work together, it went close to 80%. So there was a significant improvement, and it was mainly that we actually discovered what is the problem. Now, these are the main problems that can cause the discrepancy between dog's alert and confirmation from the laboratory. Sample collected from wrong location. Very, very prosaic reason, shouldn't have happened, and we wouldn't have discovered this if we didn't have the K9 leaders and had their notes. And when we compared their notes, where the dog indicated with the sample description we received in the lab, they were very different. So it shouldn't happen, but it can happen. Insufficient sample collected from the right location, I'll show example. High levels of background interferences, show example. And the very last is going to be swabbing used as collection technique. Insufficient sample. These samples were received in the laboratory in relation to fire in 2 different units within an industrial area. Doc indicated on 2 locations. One was the PVC flooring, another one was carpet. So you can see how big samples were submitted to the laboratory. Well, we analyzed them, and the sample number 1, which was the line of flooring, produced sufficient amount of volatile so we can positively identify and confirm the presence of petrol. While the carpet was not enough. There wasn't enough volatiles, so we had to report it as negative. Now, coming to this problem, there is a statement that the sample size can affect possibility of detecting ignitable liquid residues. We all know that. We also know that if there is a relatively high concentration of ignitables, we don't need a big sample. Actually, we prefer a tiny little one. But if there is not enough, just traces, then we need to get a sample, as large sample as possible. In reality, no one knows when the sample is collected how much is in it. So in these cases, we always recommend to collect as large sample as possible, providing that the can is not packed to the brim and under the lid, so we do have that space we need to place the tube and analyze the sample. If we don't have it, we need to tip the sample out, place it in another container, which will allow us to have this headspace about the sample. Now, another example, which actually is not the same case that insufficient sample, but it's very unusual case, and again, thanks to our cooperation, we could solve this problem. There was a fire, it was a house fire, 2-story house. The fire started on the upper floor in the bedroom area. The house was badly damaged, the roof collapsed, and the whole fire scene had to be excavated. So after everything was cleared, the dogs were called. I can't remember which one attended this scene. And the dog indicated at 2 different places. Now, the sample after excavation were actually collected from the floor in the hallway, because everything collapsed, part of it was removed, so that's where the dog indicated at 2 positions. The investigators collected beautiful large samples, both of them large tin filled with debris, was wet, but it was really big sample in both cases. One tested positive for the presence of mineral turpentine, while the other one was negative. But dog indicated at both locations. The sample was sufficient, so we really didn't know how to explain this. So what we did, and I said I'll show example that when we get unusual results or something we cannot interpret, we always spread whatever we get, debris, search through it, wash everything, and try to see what could have been responsible for that unusual result. So in this case, what did we have in sample 1, which tested positive for the presence of mineral turpentine? We had a relatively large piece of PVC tile. We had a piece of timber, gyprock, the rest not important. Timber and gyprock were eliminated for presence of any accelerant because they originated from the top, and we had sort of control samples. When we compare these contents with the sample number 2, well, we have got gyprock, we have got some plastic, fabric, and we also have a small piece of a PVC tile. So the only 2 common materials present in both samples are those portions of PVC tile. What is interesting, the one in sample 1 is partly heat reflected, while the other one is not. So what we did, we washed them, we analyzed them and confirmed the results. The big piece from sample 1 tested positive for mineral turpentine, while the small one did not. We confirmed the result, but we still couldn't understand why. And we got help, I don't know, I think Joe.
I can't remember. Probably.
Well, either of them.
We helped.
Yeah, they helped. They came to the lab, we talked about it, and they were trying to tell us what actually happened during that fire. So the accelerant mineral terps was poured in the bedroom area upstairs. And as it was poured there, it traveled down the staircase, through the landing, and from the landing, it was dripping on the PVC tiled floor in the hall. So from those several drops, it actually created a thin stream of mineral turpentine. So what does it mean? Not every tile in the hall was contaminated with mineral turpentine, and not even every part of contaminated tile not every part was contaminated. So what happened? There was a small part of that tile collected in sample 1, which had been in contact with mineral turps, and possibly the heat effect would sort of.
And we're rolling.
Good. So in this slide, it's another example of pyrolysis product, but in this case, it's so bad, it was so strong, that this is a type of sample we simply cannot sort of detect. Now, this particular sample was collected from a fire where Shiba indicated, yes. The sample was brought to the lab, we analyzed it. There is no way we could see any ignitable liquid residue. After that, we divided the sample in half. We spiked one half with a small amount of petrol, but we still couldn't see even addition of that petrol. So for us, it was absolutely negative sample. Both dogs, Vina and Shiba, came to the lab. Shiba indicated again on this sample, Vina did not. So what did happen? I think Shiba was trained off using this sample, and the both dogs were rewarded by indicating on the sample spiked with petrol. So this is one of the examples that if there is a tiny amount of ignitable liquid present, and there is a huge excess of pyrolysis product, there is no way, doesn't matter what is our detection limit, we simply cannot see any pattern in the jungle of peaks, and we need to accept it. Now, I'm coming to the last reason for dog indicated, lab did not. And that was a sampling technique called swabbing, using cotton wool or DNA swabs. Now, thanks God, this technique is not used anymore. It was recommended in the first place only for collection of ignitable liquids if there was a really large amount of liquid on a surface. But to swab dry surfaces is absolutely useless. Now, we received many samples in the lab where dog detected and we did not, because it was a cotton wool of the concrete floor, or it was a cotton wool swab of the wall. Well, there is no way we could detect anything. Now, and I want to mention this court case. Phil is here, I hope you will remember. There was a murder case where the accused, was accused that he killed his girlfriend and then tried to burn out her house. Investigators came to the house, dogs detected, and one detection was on the concrete floor in the garage, and another one was like a basin filled with water. Whoever attended the scene took a piece of cotton wool, cleaned the concrete floor in the garage, scooped a small jar of the water from the basin. I analyzed it, none detected, and I went to the court. And so did Phil. Do you remember that one? Yeah. Phil was sweating in the witness box for a long time, being asked questions, what is the detection limit of lab? And I was sweating in the same place, being asked about the dogs. It doesn't matter how many times the judge interrupted this cross-examination as unsuitable, it went on and on and on, till the jury was so confused that they found the accused not guilty. They just couldn't, they didn't know whom to believe, they couldn't find him guilty beyond reasonable doubt. And in the final speech, the judge told or said to the accused, you should buy a lottery ticket today. You are a very, very lucky man. Now, when I was in the witness box, I wanted to scream, it doesn't have anything to do with the detection limit. It's the sample collection technique. No one asked me about sample collection technique, and even if they did, at that time, there was nothing better. And this turned our laboratory into a lot of investigation and research and analyzing hundreds and hundreds of samples. In 2010-11, where when we started to test a polypropylene cloth to replace cotton wool for collection of ignitable liquid residues. Seeing kids, I have got them here, I'll let them to have a look, were consequently developed, they were validated, and then they were distributed to the New South Wales Police in 2013. I'll start, if you cannot hear me, I'll be yelling. I'll start with there are two types of kits. The one on there is the old version, or maybe the second oldest version. This is the new version for hand kits. So there is no confusion between them and the fire seal kit. If you wish to see what's inside, I'll be talking about, you can pull it out and feel it. The second type of kit we developed is, I'll be talking about it later, is for the fire scenes. This is the newest design, thanks to Margaret. Those pictures, they cannot be confused, which one is for which one. And also, if you want to see what's inside, as I'll be talking about it, feel free. So these are the latest designs for those kits that has been in use by New South Wales fire investigators since March 2013. And yeah, we can claim really good results. So the hand kit, as you see it, contains the tin, that's just the packaging. There are labels to label it, and also instructions how to use it. Inside the tin is the part of the kit. Is actually a piece of the polypropylene cloth, or we call it white absorbent material, rolled inside a polyethylene terephthalate bag, which is just ordinary oven bag. And we selected the size of the cloth that would fit as a glove around the hand, and to ensure a good contact between the hand and the cloth, it's done by clenching the hand. The bag serves two purposes. It's a packaging material for the absorbent material, and also once placed over the hand, it increases sweating, opening the pores and releasing whatever can be released from hand. And also, again, as a packaging material, when the cloth is moved from hand, no one does have to touch it. It just pulls out, rolls back in the tin, and it's submitted back to the laboratory for examination. Now, this entire procedure was validated and more times validated over 2 years. I don't want to talk about it because the whole procedure of everything was published in 2016, including every single step we did from 2010. So what we achieved for the hand kits, we used arbitrary amount of 200 microliters of petrol and white spirit as a medium petroleum distillate, placed it on hands, and after that we had a couple of people who were happy to do these exercises for us. We were collecting residues from their hands after 1, 2, and 3 hours. Our goal was to be able to detect, after 3 hours, to be able to detect petrol, and we were not too sure about the medium petroleum distillate, but we achieved that after 2 hours we could positively identify. We were quite happy with these results, and all we had to do after is just to wait for the first positive kit. Now, when these kits were not available, and that was between 2010 and 11, there were 30 these so-called forensic procedures conducted when suspects' hands were swabbed with DNA swabs. So 30 negative samples between 2010 and 11. When the kits were available to do this examination between 2013 and 14, again over 2 years, it's been done only 12 times, so less than half. Never mind, so they did not use the kits as often as before, but eventually we got a sample in the lab, which actually tested positive for the presence of petrol. The suspect was apprehended within 4 hours, and petrol was also detected on his shoes. We were delighted because this was our reward. This is what we have been waiting for, and this result actually triggered that the whole procedure was published, because there was a reason to publish it. It actually brought positive results. None of the research, whatever had been done before, they ever been applied for reality, like used in practice as a field test kit. So we were more than happy. Of course, within those 12 times what this test was done, one was positive, 11 samples were negative. One of them was used on post-mortem collection, which probably would need more time, more than 20 minutes to be placed on hands because the heat body is missing. And the rest were negative because the suspect was not apprehended more than 5-6 hours, or we even didn't know. But we did have more positive samples in the following year, but we simply stopped doing statistics because to do it for 5 years is enough. Now I come to the scene kits. These are the kits used to collect the samples from fire scene. The same principle, the only difference, the size of the cloth in that little metal can is half. What is it used for? Hands. Again, we have got labels, we had rubber bands, we don't today because they are placed in small metal cans. Now, this is double advantage. We can be sure that the shelf life of the kits is prolonged because they cannot be contaminated in the police vehicles as they could be when they were in plastic sachets. And also, we just get the kit and we analyze it in the tin. We know that tin is clean because we cleaned it before we put the cloth there. So it's advantage for us that as we receive these samples, we know that that is our tin, it's clean, so there is no transferring, we just put the tubes in and analyze them. Now, yes, Joe, now it's you. The scene kits were first time used on a real fire scene, not by fire investigators, but by Joel. It was in Bankstown in 2012. He attended a fire scene at the kebab shop.
Bankstown.
Sorry?
Bankstown.
Bankstown, yes.
Yeah.
With Wina. And Wina, and Wina indicated at 3 locations. Inside the shop, location 1 and 2, and near the door, back door or side door, at location 3. Now, this is what Joel did. The first sample, or first indication, was in the corner of a stainless steel display cabinet. Metals are not known to retain ignitable liquids. They actually, if there was something spilled, it would allow perfect evaporation. Maybe there was something in a tiny sort of gap between the edges, maybe not. But this is what Joel did. He pushed the cloth in the corner using a bar he found nearby. The second sample was collected from underneath of the fridge from a tiled floor. So there was no need to collect the tiles. The cloth was placed on the tiles, and again another something broken was placed on top of it. And the third one was near the side door where there was a lot of broken glass, and again under the you can see the white piece, and the glass was used as a weight to ensure good contact with the sampled surface. All 3 samples tested positive for the presence of petrol. And as you go down, I think it's clear that the sample number 3 is the strongest one. It gave the strongest response. But for that one, we use a tiny portion of the cloth for examination. And this is the advantage of these kits for us, that if we receive a really strong sample possessing a strong odor, we don't have to analyze the whole lot. We just cut a small piece so the instrument is not overflown or it's not ruining and distorting the profile. So that is a great advantage for us. We'll be forever grateful to Joel for his help in this instance, and we were very confident that the kits will work and bring good results after this experiment. Now, during the use of the kits by police officers, Margaret presented a poster talking about our success and the results, and this poster actually was rewarded the best poster of the conference in 2014. So the first chart is showing, this is between those two dates, we received 140 kits collected from the scenes. 89 were reported positive. And the chart is showing what was, well, of course, the most common accelerant was petrol. That is just following a trend of the past 200 years. And you can see that the list of the accelerant goes down to methylated spirit, oil. So the cloth really covers the whole range of ignitable liquids. So we were very happy with this distribution. The next chart is showing the surfaces the cloth was used on. Well, we were not very happy about this, and we are still not happy till today, because these kits are not used properly, not every time, even though we provided training, we provide advice. They are not always used the way they were meant to be. But still, there are a lot of pleasing figures there. Well, the largest portion we actually didn't know. Although we asked, please tell us, where did you put that cloth on? What was it? They don't. So we don't know. But the second red one is actually one of the purposes the kits were designed for, a very strong, like empty fuel containers. We don't want a 10-liter drum to be delivered to the lab, improperly packaged, and contaminate the whole lab. We don't want that. So that's what the kits are used for. They are placed inside that drum, leave it there for 20 minutes, and give us just a piece of cloth. So that is really good. The next one was used for examination of motor vehicles. And that is quite important because it's non-destructive technique. And the last one, very good success was on window seals. Again, it's very hard to sample unless you use hammer or jackhammer from a window sill. And the proportion of positive results was very good. And the last, that's it. The rest, what you see, we are not happy about because the kits were not meant to be used on soil. Soil can be sampled. They're not meant to be used on carpets, linen, fabrics, not on samples that can be readily subsampled. They are really meant to be for difficult surfaces, concrete floors, large pieces of furniture, something that cannot be subsampled. But we are not there yet. Maybe we never be. So we were very happy about this, and as I said, we don't do any more statistics. We are receiving kits, we are making them, we are providing them for free, and just analyze them, and if we get good results, we are pleased. If we don't, well, all right, maybe next week. This is one of the examples where, again, dog indicated on a metal frame. Well, I don't know how big it was, but it would be very difficult to fit it in a large arson bag, and I don't know how would we analyze it. So the kit was used exactly at the point where the dog indicated. And to ensure good contact, it was wound around the frame, and petrol was detected on it. Now, another very interesting case was Margaret's case. The police had to do examination of a vehicle suspected from transporting large quantities of accelerants. Of course, there was search warrant to do it, but no one would let them to cut pieces of carpet or the seats. Now, this picture is a simulation, my own simulation. That's not the car. That's just to show you what they did, where they placed, there were more samples collected, but where they placed the kits, and what you see from the interior of the vehicle, there was only one sample which was inconclusive. The rest of the sample tested positive for petrol. I was really surprised because we don't know how long that petrol was transported before in the car, but probably the leather seats or even if they are PVC seats, they retain petrol and the cloth was able to absorb it. So they were very surprising results. Now I am coming to almost end. Okay. And I would like to talk about two quite major cases when it comes to involvement of our laboratory. The latest one is the Roselle bombing. Everyone was talking about it. We were not involved in investigation. I just want to show you what we did apart from analyzing 37 exhibits for the presence of petrol. Petrol was everywhere. The samples were so strong that we had to sacrifice a storage room where they were actually opened and analyzed, otherwise we would contaminate the whole lab. Now, among these samples were liquids, remnants of plastic containers, debris, even a kit was used, and as I said, everything was positive for petrol. The expert evidence was given in relation to this case in Supreme Court in May 2016, so quite a long time after. Now, apart from examination for ignitable liquids, I said we use visual examination or we might use different techniques. Well, in this case, a total of 22 strips of fabric, similar to this one, were recovered from the scene. Within the debris, so I actually had to wash them in water to be able to see color, measure them and do anything, whatever I wanted with them. 22, and when all these strips would be placed together, they would represent 16.5 meters long fabric, approximately 6 centimeters wide. In addition with these fabrics, we were trying to establish where they come from, what type of material or product was it. So based on the longest piece recovered and by the presence of the hems, which are actually perpendicular in that corner and the total length of this strip, they indicated to us they could originate from a large household product such as a heavy-duty tablecloth. In addition, we did comparison of patterns on like number of strips, and it was really a very complex pattern and was repeating, and this comparison also led to the conclusion that these strips came either from the same or a similar household textile product. Not a small piece of this fabric, not a bit was ever recovered from the suspect's house. Although we alerted police immediately after the first piece was washed, we just told them, go and look for this, this and that. We sent them photographs because had this been fabric like this had been recovered from his place, we could have do some pattern matching, and that would be not a bad evidence. We didn't have any, but yet the presence of 16.5 meters of cut fabric in 6 centimeters provided really strong suspicion that this fire was premeditated, and the defense theory that it was done by unknown intruders was dismissed. The accused was found guilty of one murder and 2 manslaughters and was charged to or sentenced to minimum of 30 years imprisonment. The next case I would like to talk about is a serial arsonist case. There was nothing in the newspaper about this because it was quite an unknown arsonist for a long time. There were several fire bombings occurring in different Sydney metropolitan areas between 7th of March and 12th of May 2013. These fires were not like Molotov style cocktails were used. They were not further investigated because no one was injured. The fires were not big. For some of them, police collected some exhibits, from some of them even didn't. And the investigation started when the last client, Mark Client C, actually named a possible suspect. And then looking at all those files, suddenly modus operandi similarities were in. All the people, that's why I call them clients, because they were clients of the accused. They were unhappy clients who started legal action against his company. And all these fire bombings supposed to just to make them to pull out their complaints. The last incident related to another client of this suspect occurred in June 2013. In this case, it was in a firebombing. This client was severely bashed in front of his restaurant. And the whole procedure, like the suspect with his 2 sons coming to his restaurant the night before, just looking where to park the car, was captured on the CCTV. On the day when they were bashing him in the elevator, was captured on CCTV. After they finished, the car was stopped and they were actually identified by police as the suspect and his 2 sons. So there was so much evidence in relation to this incident that the suspect had no other choice just to plead guilty. Now we come back to the fire bombings. As I said, from some of the fires there was nothing collected because police were never called. And what was recovered from some of these fire scenes were beverage bottles. There were on two occasions, Corona Extra beer bottles. On 3 occasions, Guarana energy drink bottles. And there were also on 2 occasions, there was pieces of multicolored fabric used as wigs. And on 1 occasion, a blue fabric. That blue fabric was never recovered from the suspect's house. But what was recovered from suspect's house very soon were 4 Corona beer bottles sitting in empty, sitting in a 6-pack. And then there is 1 bottle which was recovered from one of the fire scenes. These bottles were submitted to the lab with the question, could they all originated from the same 6-pack? We did a major research in the bottle shops. I was very well known in bottle shops. The managers greeted me because I was asking them, did you get a new supply? Can I have a look? What numbers? Can I open some boxes? Can I do this? Yes, I could do whatever I wanted to. So I went through a large number of bottles in several bottle shops closely to my own area to establish similarities between different liquor stores, new supply, old supply, because these were already 3 years old, so there was no point to compare them what's currently available. But this helped us to create a conclusion. No one can ever say that these 6 bottles having absolutely identical markings come from the 6-pack. No. But what can be said, and that's the result, prompted us, that 3 of suspects' bottles, you can see the print or the time and the manufacturer's markings are in the same font. the same color, the same font. One of them is smaller. And that was actually produced on a different line, because when the beer is produced, there are at least 2 or 3 lines working at the same time. And there are about 100,000 that they come from the same six-pack. But we could say that they were made at the same time and on the same production line. And this finding was actually confirmed by the manufacturer in Mexico, who actually recorded which batches were exported to Australia at that time. So this became the strongest evidence for the case, and consequently the case was nicknamed Corona Beer Bottles. Now, coming back to the evidence, I'll be talking about that multicolored fabric used as wicks. Searching the retail outlets for similar type of fabric or whatever it was didn't bring anything. So this was the last pillowcase in Australia obtained through eBay from Adelaide. And what appears on that pillowcase, it's similar. What appeared on one small portion of fabric recovered from one wick, and also the other side of the same pillowcase, and that's the other wick, which was recovered from bottles. One used in March, one in May. So we basically established that, yes, these 2 wicks were originated from a Bob the Builder children's linen, and it became relevant to the suspect because from his garage, police brought to the lab about 6 sets of Bob the Builder linen, and brought a similar quilt cover, but no pillowcases. The pillowcases were missing. So this became quite strong evidence because we established that it's very unusual fabric and it's not commonly available in any retail outlets. Now, coming to the conclusion. We had a suspect who had a white car. The car was identified by the CCTV, was stopped several times, speeding, this, he was identified. There was a lid from that V energy drink found inside the car. There were those 3 Corona beers bottles recovered from suspect garage, and also the Bob the Builder Duna cover, having similar motifs. Again, the size was different, but the motifs and color scheme was similar to that reference pillowcase. Now, when we come to the last incident, which was an assault on the June 2nd, the suspect pleaded guilty. Then we had the first fire in March 11. That's where the Corona beer bottle was matched with the suspect's bottles, and also the wick was sort of matched to the pillowcase, or was found to be the same type of fabric as his Duna cover. Then we had another case where there were 2 Corona bottles recovered, and another case where the energy drink bottles were used, and again the car at this incident was actually captured on the speed camera leaving the scene. And another incident where there was the multicolored wick, the energy drink, and the lid. The lid was actually used, the fabric was pulled through the lid. And then we did another incident using the V energy drinks. All this evidence sort of created a small pieces of forensic jigsaw. Collectively, they provided a very clear picture for the prosecution to support their opinion. The suspect, who pleaded guilty for the assault, was found guilty for committing 5 of 6 firebombings and was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment on the 5th of February 2016. And finally, I got to the end. You will be free to go. But before I go, I always like to pass on my message, like my old message. what we expect from you to make our job better, bring the crime scene to the laboratory, give the properly packaged and sufficient exhibits, tell us the story, describe the items, tell us as much as you can, because then the laboratory will provide results, helping your investigation, and your investigation might eventually be assisting the justice system. Thank you for attention.
Describe the use of your use of the absorbed material in connection with the tin. Would that be described as a pioneering first, a pioneering unique process or method? Original,
Look,
struggling for the
I
word,
wanted to
maybe.
file for a patent for it.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
there's no way,
Yeah.
because I had not invented the cloth. The cloth was invented by an American company, and its general use is for chemical spilling. You know, like if oil is spilled in the ocean, that's what it is done.
Yeah.
There's no,
But
like,
as far as you using it in that particular way.
no
for that
one
particular
ever
purpose,
used it before for
So-
analytical purposes.
Right.
And to use it for analytical purposes, I had to look at what to do with it to be able, because it's an industrial material.
Yep.
If we analyze it for ignitable liquid resin, like it's got heaps of peaks and different compounds. So every part, what is in this tin, which is, where is the open tin? Which is the, these are the oven bags, like ordinary, not Franklin, whatever, now, they are full of ignitable liquid residues, toluene, xylene. So we need to clean them, heat them up at 120 degrees overnight till we use them. The same for this, that has got to be hung on hooks and cleaned up overnight at 120 degrees. When we do that, then we test randomly selected bags like this. They need to give us a nice straight line before we assemble this. So from this point of view, yes, it's unique. No one ever used this. Is my invention. But there is no, I'm not a genius.
But it's a clever idea, but use the available resource in a unique way.
Yes, no one ever used
So
it.
the second question is, since your publication of the results, how many other jurisdictions have started adopting?
Yes,
How many?
Canberra was the first, and I have had a lot of requests for. They all read it. I have corresponded with the other people from Brisbane and also from Tasmania. They were telling me what they used before, and they say they even tried it, but they were not successful. So I don't know how did they do it, because we were successful.
So what are the costs for those certificates? Just roughly, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to go into competition.
No.
I could make a lot of money.
It depends what you do. The original design with the sachets was very costly because I did it manually. Now there is no, and I had to hand seal the sachets. Now we don't do it. We just wreck it in the tin. So it's the tin, electricity for 16 hours at 120 degrees, sometimes to load it. Cost of these bags, which is like 80 cents. Cost of these, hard to say. Look, I calculated roughly $5 as completely done. Sink it, and I think these ones were $7 or $8. But now it's less because there is no manual. There's no manual sealing or this involved. And also we don't do anymore. We just put like a pamphlet inside.
Yep.
So no more sticky tapes with different instructions. It's just easy.
And from the, I don't do a great deal with industry, lovely people, I mean that sincerely. But are they using them well for you in terms of what you want for the police? I'll talk as I
70%.
Okay.
No, look, I really don't know. I just feel every year, we do training session, it goes well, and then suddenly, they just use them like just for fun. Yeah, we have got them, why not to use them?
Okay.
Like, just recently, I had a case, they found in the middle of the room some melted plastic, smelled like hell from whatever, all right, they collected it, big like that, and then they just put one kid here and one kid there. Well, yeah, what for fun? One was negative, one I squeezed it positive, but there was no need to do it, because it was obvious where the excellent was. Big melted plastic with a lot of melting materials and strong like that. So that's, somehow I feel that they don't use them to clean their shoes, but sometimes just, you know what, just for fun. We have got it, so why not to use it?
And of course, the
Yeah,
fire,
and
the fire
maybe
guys will be doing a wonderful job.
Some of them think that it's a magic prop, that
Yeah.
they put it there and they will get result they want. But yeah, but majority, all right, I don't want to let, it's okay, and we are very, very happy with the results we are achieving, and it's easy for us to handle this kind of things.
Question. The kits are supplied to investigative services, whether it be Fire Rescue New South Wales Police.
They go to FSG for free. We used to keep statistics. We used to monitor who get what and how many. Not anymore. It was so painful, so time-consuming. So now we do have our own representative with FSG, and when we prepare batches, we just ship everything there, and we give him a report. Let's say, all right, from Wollongong crime scene, we receive 25 kids, they need new ones. And he will automatically send them 25.
The question is, can independent investigators obtain these kits?
We don't sell them.
No.
You know, it was that's what I said. There was a thought to have a patent, but that was useless. And after that, our director made decision that we are not going to charge police because they actually, I don't know, have got some agreement. So we make them and just provide them for free. Everything.
But
At this stage, they just go to the police. and
Just
then
yeah,
the
just
enforcement
to the
office.
police.
So
Yes.
Yeah, that's a
really
question.
They made them mainly for is for the
But
investigations.
if they let me to sell them at Parkley markets, $25 I would
We
be
can.
mind.
Yeah.
that's good, I can
So if
walk
you have a
there.
market for it, then we can decide business and do it.
Future that might
Yes.
be- Do you think in the future it might be further industries that might start selling these?
Look, I don't-
Using your patented
I
technique.
don't have a patent because these days to have a patent it's just you pay hundreds of $1,000s before you get there. You know, and as I said, the main problem was that had I invented this, what is inside would be a different story. But somebody else has done this, produces it, I'm just using it. You know, it's like using sugar into a cake. Well, you cannot have a patent for that cake because you're using somebody else's ingredients. It's just an idea. I am happy that it was published, and if someone sells them next time, I don't really care. Would be
Katarina,
good.
with, on your slides about halfway through there, you gave, I understand the fact that it's good to use the pads on a surface that can't physically be removed.
Yeah,
One of the examples you showed was like a metal frame,
yes,
where you wrapped it around the side
Yes.
of the frame. I don't know how large that frame was or wasn't. You're not suggesting that they shouldn't also seize the frame, even though you might take the sample in
look, they
situ.
did, look, I don't know, I have never been there, I don't know how big that frame was. They probably wouldn't have big enough there to sample it. All right, if they sample it, maybe someone would say, oh, fingerprints. But what's the point to take it for fingerprints if it's burnt? The fingerprints are gone. The DNA is gone. So that frame was really not good enough for anything else. Just to sample from it where the dog indicated. And it proved to be positive.
I'm just thinking best evidence in court is always to have the evidence physically there. So it's one thing to have a sample and you photograph the sample. The accusation would always be, well, that's not the same piece of cloth. You know, that's what your $5,000, $8,000 base will say. I'll say, well, that's not the same piece of cloth, is it? You know, but if you can take the frame with you, you should still take it with you and seize it.
No. Look, we are not an accredited laboratory. If someone is going to tell me that that is not that piece of cloth, then someone can tell me your report is rubbish. That's the same thing. Like, I cannot afford, to board something and lose my job. It's credibility.
Well, it doesn't have to be you, the police officer sees it. I think, and this does have
That
to be.
is their problem. Not theirs. And they have got to be honest. That is not my problem either.
That's what I'm saying, even if it can't be appropriately contained in a container, I would suggest if it can be physically moved and we can seize, it should still be physically moved and seized.
Where do you stop though? I mean, you might have to take a whole wall if you're going with that argument.
It can, it depends on the situation. So we don't know how big that piece of frame was. But if it was practical to physically take it,
So
seize
then
it.
it's all to continuity of evidence. So if you've got the process whereby you do that and maintain integrity, you just do that and you get the sample piece of cloth.
90% of it doesn't go to court anyway, it's just the report that goes to court. So all those samples that you take still sit at either the police holding, the laboratory or something. It's the report that goes in. So all they're questioning is the report in lots of ways, not that physical sample being shown.
But it's got to be available.
To a point,
Look,
sometimes they're destroyed.
Maybe
depending on the
they
sampling techniques.
took it, I don't know. That's they, sometimes they take extra samples and take, if you need them, be a problem. But most of the time, nothing. Marker A, marker B, marker C, doesn't mean anything to me.
Any more questions?
Just in terms of the substrates you received, what kind of substrates did you receive that you found either no lipids in the actual substrates? And then have you had any experiences where you received substrates that have no lipids in them from
Yes.
What kind of substrates?
Burnt tires, yes. You can ask Phil, any of these guys, they wouldn't take their dog to burn tires because every dog would indicate, they do. Because burnt tires produce almost petrol-like profile. All the constituents are there. They are in different proportions. We can see it. And of course, there are additional constituents we can see. So we can establish, where is it coming from, even very recently I had a case. And luckily, I didn't have to speculate too much because they told me it was an entire manufacturing company. And I could see it straight away when I looked at the results. So that is the only one where we need to be careful, but we know about it, but the dogs do not go near tires. But those recycled tires can be used in, maybe they're using this carbon, and then you don't know. And when it burns, you still might get the same sort of profile. Luckily, we do have information. There is a specific component that one appears together with the petrol, like the residues. We know that where is it mostly coming from. And also, we would probably then sample and try to confirm that we are dealing with rubber, confirmed rubber. But unless you know what, it's so important to know what you analyze, and where is it from?
Right.
Is that it? Okay, Katarina and your team, thank you very much for presenting
You're more than
tonight.
welcome.
It's great to see, like virtually a world first in something so innovative that supports the justice system and the investigators out there bring the evidence to court in a forensic manner and
We are
guys
happy.
like that.
Yeah.
So, thanks to the very generous
Generosity. Who told you?
Oh, wait a minute. This has got to go 4 ways. We can't. So the other 3 bottles will come one day.
Wow.
Where's the big foot? So
No, okay, put it
thanks so
here.
much.
So is that for me or for all of us?
That's for you to decide how that gets.
Katarina, we'll share it. So,
I will share it.
Have the morning tea
definitely. We got, yeah.
on Friday.
Don't worry, we'll work it out.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.